A lot of us have been expecting AMD's 7800 and 7700 GPUs. It's rumored to be releasing in September and announced in August at Gamescom. But what many of us maybe aren't talking about, and probably not talking about enough, is the 7900 non-XT that is actually out right now. This card released on July 28th. And if you are curious, the GRE stands for Golden Rabbit Edition, which makes a lot of people think it's going to be a China exclusive graphics card. But the fact that they have named a US price means this card could be coming to the US. They've done very little advertising for this card, and that's with good reason. Because when you take a quick look at the specs, this is basically a 7900 XT, but slightly cut down. So instead of 84 compute units, we're going to 80. Instead of 5376 stream processors, we're going to 5120. Even everything from the total VRAM from 20 gigabytes to 16 gigabytes, the memory bus width, well, obviously in order to accommodate that VRAM has to be cut down, but it's cut down from 320-bit to 256-bit. In turn, makes the memory speed get cut down from 20 gigabits per second to 18 gigabits per second, and the overall bandwidth from 800 to 576. Although because this is a cut down card, they are quoting lower power draw from 315 watts from the 7900 XT to 260 watts on the 7900 non-XT. And also this card is going to be launching at a price of $650. And that's where all of the problems come in. We've seen the XT come down to $700 pretty frequently. Like this one was on June 25th. Yeah, that puts in a dangerous spot. It's only $50 less than that. This is another mistake AMD is about to make when launching their graphics cards. Now with this leak, they did show some performance metrics and 10 games total against the 4070, the 7900 non-XT, and the 7900 XT. What I did real quick was run the numbers on them. I took the absolute total of everything, and then I just divided it by 10 games because that's how many games there are. I came out with the average FPS. The 7900 non-XT gets 113 FPS, and the 7900 XT gets 140 FPS in these 10 games. 10 games is actually a decent sample size. It's about 81% the performance of the 7900 XT. And that puts us in a position where we can theorize where this card is going to place. If you go to Tech Power Up, now this isn't exactly always going to be the most accurate thing, but if you go to the 7900 XT and look at their relative performance chart, and according to the rough numbers I just ran, this should perform about the same as a 6900 XT, but a 6950 XT will probably be faster than the 7900 non-XT. And the 6800 XT will definitely not be that far behind, and the fact that both of these cards also have 16 gigabytes of VRAM just like the 7900 non-XT makes them still a compelling option. Will this card be a good deal at $650? I'm gonna spoil it. No. If you want a faster card like the 6950 XT, you can get that for $630. It will literally be faster for less money from the same brand with the same amount of VRAM. And you could even get a 6800 XT, which will probably perform about the same, 68,000. Ooh. It would cost literally $130 less. Am I taking crazy pills? Like, what is AMD cooking right now? I don't understand. So the 7900 non-XT is probably gonna launch very poorly. AMD is doing AMD things as usual. I guess the only advantage to getting this card would be like, say, getting AV1 encoding, and the fact that it's going to draw less power than those other cards, because the 6950 XT I think draws about 350 watts. In other news though, I just wanted to give an update on the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte, because this is another card that NVIDIA is trying to act like never happened. And I wanted to check up if anybody had bought these things and done reviews on them. Literally a week ago, Hardware Unboxed did their review, and then my video is the second one that comes up. I don't even own this card. I think one other reviewer here testing games actually bought the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte. I think reviewers are thinking that it doesn't even need a review because it's so laughably bad. So, in other news on the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte, we've already seen the price drop a little bit in Europe. This has kind of been the common story with everything in 4000 series. And even with AMD's cards, usually we see price drops pretty quickly because these things really aren't selling at their MSRP. We've seen at Mind Factory in Germany, this card has dropped by 30 euros. So hopefully it'll come down to reality at some point in time, because if you are buying a 4060 Ti, I hate to say it and it's a hard pill to swallow, but you probably shouldn't buy the 8GB one. You should probably be buying the 16GB one. But it's just so outrageously priced, and it's priced so high that you might as well just get a 4070 at that point. In the US, this card isn't like that like out there. If you look on Newegg, for example, there's 1, 2, 3 models on a brand new graphic. They're not sold out. No, they're not sold out. There's only 3 models on their website. But you do see that one of these models is actually Zotac's Gaming GeForce RTX 4060 Ti 16GB. Yeah. All that bad stuff. But it's the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse inspiration bundle. So if you actually look into this, if you like Spider-Verse and you are getting a graphics card right now, this is the bundle that they have, and it comes with backplate and stuff, and it's magnetic, so I think you can have the normal backplate or have this one. And then the backplate looks like this when it's on the GPU. This is on the 4060 Ti one. It's okay, but it could be a little bit better. And then the box looks like this though. The box looks pretty dope. They also offer it in a 4070 model. This is the amp version, which means it's a triple fan cooler, and I think the art looks cooler on this one in my personal opinion. This art on this almost made me want to buy a 4000 series GPU because I just like Across the Spider-Verse so much. But in other GPU news, a lot of you guys may know that the 4090 doesn't actually take up the entire Ada Lovelace 102 die. There actually is room to make a 4090 Ti, but according to this, 4090 Ti isn't going to happen anymore. Like, this isn't confirmed, this is a rumor, but I don't think Nvidia needs it because it doesn't seem like AMD can catch the 4090 in performance. So Nvidia, if you think of it logically, that might as well just restrict us from getting 4090 Ti performance, because why would they spoil that? With technically next generation, we would get a bigger performance gain and make the next generation cards look more attractive. And this was leaked by Copite7Kimi. They are a very consistent like Nvidia leaker. So also the RTX 5090 might have a 512-bit memory bus, as said by Copite7Kimi here again. Combined with multiple sources, I confirm the gaming flagship of Ada Next, which would be 5000 series, will have a 512-bit memory interface, which means this memory is going to be outrageously fast. If you know how GPUs are constructed, that each die can account for 32 bits on the memory bus. 512 divided, that would mean that this would have 16 gigabytes of RAM if each little die was 1 gigabyte. But I would assume they would use 2 gigabyte dies, and that would mean that this 5090 would have 32 gigabytes of RAM. For reference, the current 4090 has a 384-bit bus, and that VRAM comes in at over a terabyte per second of bandwidth. That could mean the next 5090, and if it's using GDDR7 memory or something like that, this could get maybe up to like 1500 to 1800 gigabytes per second, which means it's never gonna have a data problem, and that's super cool. But also though, when the RTX 3080 launched, it only has 10 gigabytes memory. In fact, I'm recording on an RTX 3080 right now. 10 gigabytes of memory was pretty limiting, and it seems like behind the scenes, Nvidia was about to release a card that had 20 gigabytes of memory instead and call it the 3080 Ti. Later on, we did see that the 3080 Ti only had 12 gigabytes of memory, but this was a possible option, and this would obviously solve the VRAM problem that the 3080 Ti has. But it seems like Nvidia probably didn't want to release this card because that is more than enough VRAM, and that would mean you wouldn't have to upgrade your card at some point in the future. Nvidia doing Nvidia things. We do see one of these 20 gigabyte 3080 Ti's because they actually were in full production and about to be launched. Nvidia pulled the plug at basically the last second. And we see one of these here in MSI Supreme, and yeah, it just looked like a normal 3080, but it had 20 gigabytes of VRAM. With CPU news, on the mobile side of processors, AMD just announced today the Ryzen 7945H X3D. That is a mouthful. But what this is a 16 core, 32 thread processor that it will be on mobile, so like laptops and stuff. It will have a 55 plus watt TDP and a 5.4 gigahertz boost. And if you notice here, this is the important number. This has 3D V cache on a mobile processor, which gives it 144 megabytes of cache. If you know anything about the X3D V-Cache chips in FPS in games, say the 7800 X3D, which released in March, they are some of the fastest chips for gaming in the world. Now, they do usually fall behind in productivity because their clock speeds have to be a little bit lower. They're also extremely power efficient. So if we run it here, the 7800 X3D for that crazy gaming performance, like the within top 5 gaming CPUs on the planet, it's like 86 watts to run this chip. 8 cores, 16 threads. Compared to a chip like the Intel 13700K, which gave similar performance in game, was drawing 280 watts. I mean, that's literally over 3 times the power. When AMD releases these X3D chips onto laptops and stuff, we could see insane power efficiency. Because in laptops, power is a huge concern. You need to cool a laptop in a very small space, as well as you need to be able to deliver that power in general. And that means your battery or whatever in your laptop is going to be struggling. AMD did do a video on this earlier today. I'll link this in the description, as well as every link is in the description, and show basically how it performs versus the normal 7950HX. And sometimes it was a little slower depending on whatever use case, but most of the time it's probably more power efficient, and on average they say it's 15% faster than the non-X3D one. This will be coming to an Asus ROG laptop August 22nd. Also, another update with Ratchet and Clack Rift Apart on PC. This is one of the first games on PC to release with Direct Storage 1.2. And if you don't know what Direct Storage is, how it basically works, instead your SSD or whatever storage device you have communicates directly with the GPU, and then the GPU manages that data instead of going through the CPU. And what this can do is obviously reduce CPU overhead. That's nice. It can also reduce the amount of VRAM you need because you can use different ways of compressing the data when it sends it to the GPU. Also, in games, it can reduce loading times, which that's just a better gaming experience. So like direct storage is super cool all around. One of the main things that was weird when this game released is it had system specs, and on the lowest ones, you didn't need to have an SSD, which sounds kind of weird, right? Because you'd think you need really fast storage to cut down on the loading times and actually get accurate performance. Well, a YouTuber by the name of Iceberg Tech, he makes great content, by the way. I watch his stuff like all the time. So he did do some testing on Ratchet and Clack Rift Apart, and he put it on a hard drive. From what he found in cutscenes, when it's loading things, there's like a big stutter. So I'll just show you this here. So when you see in the frame time here, huge stutter. Like the video isn't paused. What it would do in cutscenes, while I was waiting for the hard drive to keep up, is it would basically just let the audio keep playing and then jump the cutscene forward to match up with it. So it seems like the developers behind this did account for hard drive systems, and they did a little workaround. It's not perfect. That was really only in cutscenes, because in normal gameplay, what he found is that there wasn't really any issues whatsoever. So what he found is that what Ratchet would do is basically just hang in this dimension over here just a little bit longer as the hard drive loaded the data for the next zone. I thought it would be worse than it really was, and it wasn't that bad. But for the Nintendo Switch, which definitely doesn't have a hard drive in it, the Switch 2 is rumored to be releasing in early 2024, and I think it's supposed to be in Q1. So that's basically within March of 2024. Chip manufacturer was rumored to be getting more sales or something like that by the end of the year, and that means that basically Nintendo would be using those chips to manufacture the Nintendo Switch 2. This is definitely like a rumor. It wouldn't surprise me. The Switch came out in like 2017, and it's definitely showing its age nowadays. Even in 2017, it was kind of struggling in games, because we see things like the Steam Deck existing now, and it puts the Switch to shame. Also, in console news, the PS5, you guys were aware, did have some issues with the liquid metal. What liquid metal is it's basically a solution to transfer heat. A lot of you guys might be familiar with thermal paste on a computer. Thermal paste is basically a thermal conductive bridge from the heat sink for the chip to the actual chip itself. But liquid metal is another way of approaching this. Unlike thermal paste, which isn't electrically conductive, it just conducts heat well. As you could assume with liquid metal literally in its name, it's very electrically conductive, but it does do a way better job of cooling chips and stuff than thermal paste does. So there was some issues that came up with the PS5. They used liquid metal for them, and because it's kind of in the name, liquid, it can leak. So there was some situations if PS5s were taken apart and then put back together that the seal could actually leak, and then this could like completely short your PS5 and break the thing. It's interesting to note that the PS5 Pro, which is rumored to be coming out by the end of 2024. Interesting that it might not have liquid metal in it. The rumor is because the new APU that is going to be in the PS5 Pro is going to be more power efficient, which means it doesn't need all that thermal conductivity liquid metal would offer, and instead they would opt for thermal paste, which I think in general that's what you want in a console. You want something you can just plop on your TV stand or whatever on your desk, and you just don't have to think about it at all. So I think thermal paste overall is a better solution for consoles. But that is some huge tech news. We went over some crazy things like the 7900 non-XT. This is probably going to be hot garbage, and how the state of the 4060 Ti 16GB is going, the card that Nvidia doesn't want you to know about. Obviously it's not really selling, it's barely at retailers in general right now. If you do want to cross the Spider-Verse GPU, have fun with that one. That one's pretty cool. Nvidia seems like they're going to be saving the performance of a 4090 Ti until the next generation, and the next huge big flagship card might be on a 512-bit memory bus. Also, I wish we had this 3080 Ti 20GB, but Nvidia couldn't be that nice. Also, AMD just announced X3D chips for mobile. Super exciting because they're super efficient. So we're just gonna get better performance on laptops, handheld consoles, maybe. Also, Ratchet and Clack was interesting that it can run on a hard drive. They got that working. Nintendo Switch 2 might be coming out by the early March of next year, and the PlayStation 5 Pro is not going to be using liquid metal anymore because I think it's just risky. But this has been it for me with some tech news, super exciting stuff, fun to catch up, and y'all have a great day. Peace.